Coming up, some incredible airplanes at the AOPA Fly-In last Saturday. AOPA demands action on medical certificate reform, and low and slow for a long ways to support our wounded warriors. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
As far as the Verb camera goes, it's the solution. We've used every other action camera and we've thrown them all away or given them away because now we have 5 Verbs and they're all over our airplanes and we wouldn't use anything else.
Get it done in 30 days. That's what AOPA is telling the Department of Transportation about rules on medical certification reform. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AOPA Live this week. I'm Tom Haynes. AOPA is leading an effort to get the Department of Transportation to act quickly. DOT is now reviewing a proposed regulation change from the FAA that would liberalize medical certification requirements for private pilots. 6 other aviation associations joined with AOPA in a letter to the DOT Secretary urging him to push the rule out for public comment within just 30 days. The association said medical certificate reform could save the FAA more than $1 million a year. Pilots, meanwhile, could save more than $140 million. And there would be no impact on safety by changing the medical requirements. Meanwhile, 3 influential members of Congress are also urging Transportation Secretary Anthony Foxx to expedite the medical certificate rule. In separate letters, they also asked to get the rule out for public comment within 30 days. Senator Mark Begich of Alaska said government agencies should respond to common sense ideas like medical certificate reform. And Representatives Todd Rokita of Indiana, Sam Graves of Missouri said pilots are frustrated by FAA's previous foot dragging on reform. And that demand for speedy action after years of delay was echoed by pilots at the AOPA Fly-In in Spokane, Washington last Saturday. Hundreds added their names to the giant petition demanding medical certificate reform.
Well, I think making medical licenses as easy to get as possible is important for general aviation, so I'm all for it.
That would save everybody time and money. The FAA, the pilots, anyone in regulatory. I think it's been shown pretty conclusively that the third-class medical doesn't really prevent any accidents in aviation.
It's obviously a very high priority for AOPA. You're politically, financially, explaining the issues. It's going to be a struggle because of the bureaucracy, but obviously you guys are the right ones to do it. I think it's one of the most important things you're working on.
There's absolutely no data to show that a third-class medical certificate enhances safety. After all, sports pilots have been flying safely for a decade now without a medical. Glider pilots, longer than that. We talked with a doctor in the camping area at Phelps Field, and he, like many doctors, agrees that the aviation medical examination isn't likely to predict future pilot incapacitation.
I mean, every doctor knows that you can't make much of an opinion on a physician in a 5 or 10 minute interview. I mean, the doctor that knows patients the best is the person that spends, months and years getting to know them. And if you were going to have somebody evaluate you, those would be the best people to do it, not somebody that takes a snapshot in time on a once every 2-year visit.
And it's no surprise that questions about medical certificate reform dominated the discussion during Mark Baker's pilot town hall meeting during the Spokane Fly-In.
The question is about the driver's license medical, good faith or BS?
Good faith or BS? Well, some people know the government, don't they? I actually do believe, and I really do believe, that we're going to see movement. It may not be as fast as I want, or certainly you want to get done, but I actually believe that we are out of the FAA because Huerta is trying to make something happen. And when you try to explain to people that are non-aviators, first many of them are in the FAA, by the way, but then you get to Department of Transportation, and then over to Office Management and Budget. This third-class medical has been around for 80 years. Why should it go away for private flyers? You have to really start at the beginning. It takes a long time to have that conversation with people who haven't had to put up with the BS of doing a third-class medical. So do I think it's BS? The answer is no. I do really believe we've been pushing really hard, and I think we're going to get something that works for most of us. Is it going to work for all of us? Probably not. But is it going to be start someplace down the road that we can get something else as we start to evolve and learn? I do I do feel very positive. By sometime next year, we're going to feel pretty good about it. But That may be overly optimistic. It could take another year beyond that, but something will happen.
There was a lot happening last Saturday at Felts Field in Spokane, Washington. Some 240 aircraft flew in. There might have been more if the passes to the east and the west of Spokane hadn't been fogged in that morning. Despite the heavy rain Friday afternoon, you could find 25 aircraft in the campground early Saturday morning.
Oh, it was great camping. You know, it's the first time I've ever actually been able to come to a fly-in and camp, and we had a blast. It was nice to be able to come in the night before, wake up this morning, be rested and relaxed and ready for a great day.
And that great day included a pancake breakfast provided by EAA Chapter 79er, a variety of seminars on such things as ATC communications and aircraft ownership, and of course, the free lunch for AOPA members. More than 1,500 folks chowed down at Felts Field. And there were a lot of interesting things to see, as AOPA Live executive producer Warren Morningstar reports.
You know, all of our AOPA fly-ins have something unique about them. Here in Spokane, it's some pretty unique old aircraft.
Her name is Sherbert, and she looks awfully good for 56 years.
Had some of the original paint left on it when I bought it, so we had to match just enough so we could match the colors.
And the colors are straight from the 50s.
These colors were very common on cars in the 50s. Yeah. And so you'll see things like Chevrolet Bel Airs in that coral color or the seafoam green.
Sherbert represented the Cessna Pilot Society at the fly-in, and she's a hit wherever the old girl goes.
I get a lot of compliments on it, a lot of compliments. And girls like it, girls and women like it. And so it's great. I'm sort of trying to attract more women into aviation. I've been flying about 25 years, and about half my hours are in this airplane, and it's a great airplane.
Now, Sherbert is a spring chicken compared to Miss Vito, a 1931 Belanca J300 Special. Actually, this is a replica built to recreate the historic flight from Japan to Washington State by Clyde Pangborn and Hugh Herndon. Now, last week we introduced you to Addison Pemberton's Boeing 40. And some say Addison is responsible for all of this.
It started with a guy named Addison Pemberton, and he's a pretty famous restorer, and he gave us all old airplane disease.
Larry's disease led to this Stearman. After training World War II pilots, it trained A&P mechanics. It still has the original wood wings. Unlike many Stearmans, it never was a crop duster. But this 1930 Laird commercial was. Restored from the ground up by Dick Edmonston and Larry Howard, it's the only one now flying. And this is reputedly one of the most difficult aircraft to fly. But Rich Aldridge disputes that.
It's a beauty to fly. It's both ends of the flight that you have to pay attention to it. Both takeoff and landings. It's got my attention. It's told me a couple of times, don't do that again, very clearly. Yep. And I say, thank you, sweetheart, I'll never do that again.
This is a replica of the 1934 Granville Brothers Intercontinental Racer. And really, the GB isn't that difficult.
It's not real stable, so there's no autopilot. You're with it all the time, but no bad traits at all on flying. I've got about 40 hours in it now. I'm starting to at least feel somewhat, no, let's see, I'm not terrified anymore. I've settled down from that. I won't say comfortable because I don't know that you'll ever get comfortable in something like this.
At the AOPA Fly-In in Spokane, Washington, Warren Morningstar, AOPA Live.
What an amazing collection of old airplanes. And our next fly-in will be September 20th to Chino Airport in Southern California. Hope to see you there. Well, coming up right after the break, the FAA nips online flight sharing in the bud and flying a low and slow machine from Alaska to Oshkosh and back. You're watching AOPA Live this week.
It's been called the most sophisticated single-engine airplane ever, but to the people whose loved ones are alive today, it's called a lifesaver. The Cirrus Airframe Parachute System, only from Cirrus Aircraft.
Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live this week. And this week is National Aviation Week. Tuesday was National Aviation Day and also Orville Wright's birthday. It was President Franklin Roosevelt who proclaimed the anniversary of Orville's birth would be a day to recognize aviation's contributions to the nation and the world. And in honor of Aviation Week, the South Carolina Aviation Association and the South Carolina Aeronautics Commission released this video showcasing how the state depends upon general aviation. There are more than 100 aerospace companies in South Carolina, and in that state alone, aviation is a multi-billion-dollar business supporting more than 70,000 jobs.
Our aviation services are mostly related to wildfire suppression. We do that thousands of times a year. We have aircraft up that locate the fires. We dispatch our ground resources, and then the aircraft help us find the fire and actually watch the weather and help us make the right decisions on the ground to suppress it.
Life Made Accessible with Aviation runs about 7 minutes. You can find it on YouTube. Of course, what happens in the States is as important to us as what happens on the national level. That's why AOPA has a team of 7 regional managers based around the U.S. And joining us now is our advocacy expert, Melissa Rudinger. And Melissa, these regional managers are an important part of AOPA's efforts to defend things happening around the states. What's up with those folks these days?
That's right, Tom. Our regional managers, along with our airport support network, are literally our boots on the ground defending GA. AOPA's regional managers are working in the state legislatures to get laws passed that will help us to cut taxes on aviation and to make sure money raised from aviation goes to aviation.
Did you know that the aircraft registration fee that you pay to the state every year, 90% of that goes to the general fund and only 10% of it goes to aeronautics? You did, exactly. We are very adamant that all of the aviation revenue that you all contribute, that we all contribute to the system, should go to support the airports. And so we've been working very hard over the last couple of legislative sessions with our partners at the Washington Pilots Association, the airport managers, NBAA, and all of our other collaborators here in the state to try to get that money that you're already paying to go to airports, which are so badly in need of that money.
The AOPA regional managers give updates on all of the issues in their states at all of our fly-ins. All over the United States, AOPA continues its advocacy efforts to keep flying affordable and accessible. For example, in the past 3 months alone, AOPA has had success in passage of Wisconsin legislation to exempt aircraft owners from sales tax on parts, labor, and maintenance. Recently, we've supported a Kansas law that exempts amateur-built aircraft from property taxes. Also in the past few months, we've continued our efforts to clear the way for recreational use liability protection. California has just joined the growing list of states with liability protection for recreational aviation. In late June, Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill that protects landowners who allow recreational aviation on their property. The bill had been introduced on behalf of the Recreational Aviation Foundation with very strong backing from AOPA. And in Michigan, private airfield owners are a step closer to liability protection. The State House has passed a bill that now goes to the Michigan Senate for consideration. AOPA Regional Manager Brian Budds was at the State House and testified several times as the bill was considered, and he will keep up our advocacy efforts until the bill is signed into law, hopefully later this year. Liability protection is important because many states do not specify aviation as an activity covered by existing recreational use protections.
Thanks, Melissa. It's always important to keep that state stuff in mind because, as I say, all politics is local, and a lot of stuff happening at the state level really impacts a lot of us day to day more so than the federal level.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, spreading the word about your upcoming flight plan is enough to make you a commercial operator. That's the FAA's legal interpretation. 2 startups that want to help pilots find people to share flight expenses with Uber-like apps requested the opinion. They didn't like it. It's an issue that has been hashed out many times over the years, and the simplest answer is that any pilot, regardless of certificate level, who advertises a flight to the public becomes a legal definition, a commercial carrier. And that is not the answer that AirPooler and Flight Now were hoping for. But it is an answer that the FAA has consistently given for similar questions for decades. Well, flying a tail dragger low and slow to Oshkosh rates pretty high on the cool scale. Departing from Alaska and using the flight to raise money for wounded warriors puts it in a whole new category, though. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop caught up with a pilot who did just that.
2,800 miles at 85 knots. All comes down to putting this green Citabria on the green dot.
Green dot cleared to land. Got another one, just Citabria, just turning final there. Just keep it up, green dot cleared to land.
But for 21-year-old Alex Mumley Dupree, flying into Oshkosh has a real purpose.
We use the flight to raise awareness about both general aviation and the Wounded Warrior Project.
One Flight for Warriors was thought up while Alex was deployed overseas. It would be a barnstorming fundraiser for the Wounded Warrior Project.
I thought of a good way to give back to the community, make a difference in other people's lives, and give back to our brothers in arms.
He took off from home base in Alaska, where he's stationed with the Air Force, and flew the Alaska Highway in the reverse of the old Alaska-Siberia air route, camping along the way and eating dehydrated food. Needless to say, those cheese curds in Wisconsin tasted even better when he landed 35 hours later.
The flight itself was just once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I met a lot of great people, people I'll always remember.
And he raised more than $7,000 for Wounded Warriors before turning around and heading back the same epic way he came. Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
That was quite a flight. In fact, the return flight took 3.5 days alone. Alex flew about 5,600 miles round trip. And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to the AOPA Live This Week viewers in Spokane who stopped by to say hello. It's great to meet you. Remember, you can watch us anywhere, anytime you want. We're on iTunes, Roku, YouTube, and of course, AOPALive.org. And however you watch, we'll be back again next Thursday for another episode of AOPA Live This Week. Thanks for watching. I'm Tom Haynes.